Welcome to Project Likkutei Torah, Parshas Eikev, Daf Yud Dalid. Going to share my screen here. We'll start the mimer with Vakhalta ושבעת וברכת. This is at the end of Yud Dalid Amud Aleph. Vakhalta ושבעת וברכת v'gomer. So it says in the Parsha, you have here the full pasuk. Vakhalta ושבעת וברכת Hashem Elokecha al הארץ hateva asher nasan lach. Gemara learns from this. This is referring to the first bracha, Birchas Hazon. Al ha'aretz is referring to Birchas ha'aretz, the second bracha, Al ha'aretz ve'al ha'mazon. Ateva is referring to the third bracha, B'nei Yerushalayim. Now the Gemara asks the question, according to Rabbi, he says you can't have two brachas ending with the same theme, with the same idea. So how do you have the first bracha Hazon is hakol, and the second bracha al ha'aretz ve'al ha'mazon? Seemingly, it's redundant. You have Hazon and Mazon. So the Gemara answers, Eretz the mafka Mazon. It's the brachas on Eretz that gives forth Mazon, that gives forth the sustenance. We have to understand, why do we need to mention Mazon altogether? We already have Mazon mentioned in Birchas Hazon. So seemingly, it's an answer, but the answer still requires more understanding. Inyan, it's brought that the Gemara explains beforehand that Moshe he established the bracha of Birchas Hazon when the man descended, and Yehoshua established the bracha of Al ha'aretz ve'al ha'mazon when the Yidden entered Eretz Yisrael, when they entered the Eretz, when they entered the land. Now the Rashba asks a question that we'll answer at the end of today's share. That we've established that the first three brachas are midoraisa. And if so, if it's midoraisa, it should all be happening in Chamisha Chumshei Torah, not by Yehoshua, not by David and Shlomo. So how is it that it's midoraisa? And he answers what he answers. We'll see what Chassidus answers soon. But basically, we have the nusach and matbeya of Birchas Hazon. This is what Moshe was misakin, and the nusach, the matbeya, the nusach of the second bracha was made by Yehoshua, but the inyan already existed beforehand. The inyan of the bracha on haaretz. But we see that the first bracha that we make is al haaretz. Hazon is hakol, and Hazon is hakol was made by Moshe Rabbeinu at the time of Yeridas Haman. So the whole thing is shaykh to man. And therefore, this answers also the question of why we have two brachas on Mazon, Hazon is hakol and al ha'aretz ve'al ha'mazon, because the first one is referring to what type of Mazon, lechem min hashamayim, referring to the man, and the second Mazon is referring to lechem min haaretz. But then, of course, we have another question, which is, why do we need the bracha of Hazon, which is referring to Yeridas Haman? We're not eating man today. We're going to see, this is going to be the whole explanation in the mimer is going to be the idea of what is the idea of man. We're going to see that we get a tremendous power from the idea of the man. Historically, back originally when we ate it, but conceptually, even today, when we say this bracha of Hazon es hakol. So what is the whole inyan of the man? So first, we have to understand the inyan of what is the whole idea of man. That is about man in this week's parsha. Asher lo yadata, you didn't know it, and lo yadan avisecha. It's a very very lofty level. And it's higher than the level of Avos, and basically it's coming from the Bechina of Moshe. And as we know, the man descended in the Zuchus of Moshe. The Zohar says that Moshe is the level of Shamayim, and Shamayim, which contains the Hashamayim, contains the Isis of Moshe. And this is the inyan of man is connected to the inyan of Moshe. Now, to bring in another idea, to understand another pasuk from this week's parsha, it says, in order to make known, that man does not live by bread alone, but I'll call adam. A person lives on all that which comes forth from the mouth of Hashem. Now, what does this mean exactly? It's explained in Likkutei Torah that this is referring to the Moitze Pi Havaya Sheba Michael, that this is referring to the word of Hashem. We know every Michael has the word of Hashem, and that's in the Michael, and that's what's giving vitality. Alter Rebbe says it's Deichak Ktsas. Now, to go to the next segment here, the Alter Rebbe is now going to explain the whole idea of man al pi Kabbalah, based on the whole idea of tohu and tikkun. That basically what we're going to see is that, to give you the idea ahead of time, that our whole purpose in lechem min haaretz, the food that we eat, is how do we have the ability to be mevar the food, as Chassidus is mevar, because the food actually comes from shviras hakelim, which is called, we know there are the different names of Hashem associated with the gematria of Shem Yudkei Vavkei, but the ones that are negea to this mimer are the Shem Sag, Samech Gimel, and that is associated with Olam HaTikun. It's a very high, lofty level. But there was Shvias HaKelim, so it fell. Where did it fall down to? It fell down into the level of what's called Ban, the name Ban, Beis Nun, another name of the Gematria of Hashem. And we are Adam, Aleph Daled Mem, is the Gematria Mem He, Ma. So we are at the level of Ma, the human being is the level of Ma, which is the level of Tikkun, and we take the Ban and we're Mavar, the Sag that fell into Ban. All right, this is basically the idea. So the idea of Toyu and Tikkun, that in Toyu we had this level of Yesh. And therefore, what was Yesh? What is Yeshus? Why did things not work well with Yeshus? Like we all know in our own household and our own life, they don't work because there's no hiskalulus. Things can't get hiskalulus, is that everything has a part of the other and therefore can coexist with the other, because everything is inter-inclusivity of all levels. So therefore, everything feels that it's part of the other. Well, the world of Tayu did not have that. It only had the Yeshus of the Eibishter, whatever that means. And therefore, all of those levels fell down. There was the Shvira, and they all fell down. They fell down into the lower level, into Shem Ban. And that's the idea of Haaretz Soihu. The world was Tohu. This was the original point where it couldn't contain the Ora Liki because there was no Hiskalus, and thus there was a Shvira. So the Adam is from the level of Tikkun, which is Shema, and he has the idea of Hiskalus as explained. And since the Shadish of Olam HaTayu is from the name of Sag, which is higher than Ma, that's why Yahya Adam. Why I'll call Meitza Pi Havaya Yahya Adam, that we're able to subsist on Semeach and Chai, because the Getlichkeit that's in them is sourced in the level of Sag, which is higher. So this, now the Rebbe goes and explains. So the inyan, you have the inyan of lechem levadai, and this is the inyan of lechem min haaretz, which is the birurim of ban, that we're taking the lower levels that have fallen to ban, which is, by the way, gematria behema, and we take that level and we're mevarer it, and we're mevarer it to higher. But then you have something totally higher, something that is higher than birurim, and that's going to be moitze Pi Havaya, which is higher than Berurim, and that's going to be the inyan of Man, the Alter Rebbe is now going to explain. Inyan ki al kol moitze hulu. So possibly the idea is that there's something that's beyond the moitze Pi Havaya. I'll call moitze Pi Havaya. Moitze Pi Havaya is everything in Hishtalshlus, the levels of Sag and the Shvira and the lower levels. But you have something that's really beyond that, and that's the level of Man. And Man is connected to Tal, to the idea of Tal. That we know that there was Tal. There was the Shichvas Tal. It was inside of the Kmunach Bekufsa. It was inside of the dew, and the dew. Chassidus explains Al Pi Kabbalah that it's a dew. Tal is a very high level. Pasuk says Tal Oreis. It's basically the level of Oreis that cannot be contained inside of Kalim. It's such a high level. Everything in Hishtalshlus is an or that can be contained inside of a Kli. That's the whole inyan of the Sfiras, even the higher level of Sfiras. Everything is the inyan of an or inside of a Kli, but the inyan of Tal is coming from this higher level. Tal, the Bedulcha, is the language in Kabbalah, in the Zoyar. and it's malubish moichas sima, this level of mayach that's higher than chachma of atzilus. Moichas sima is the concealed mayach that's beyond our understanding altogether. It's shalamayla michachma atzilus. The Alter Rebbe says, and that's the level of man. So man is coming from this very high spiritual level that's basically beyond birurim. And what we're going to see soon, what the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, is that from this level, it actually empowers us, since we're getting from this very high level, it empowers us to be able to do the avodah of birurim. That's ultimately going to be why we start off with the beracha of hazanas hakol, referring to the man, even though we don't have the man, but we have the level of this, the idea of man coming from the shorish, from this highest level of giluyim, the yichuda ilah, that is ultimately going to help us with our yichuda tata. So the Alter Rebbe continues. A person cannot subsist just by the inyan of birurim, that he's mevar the ban and extracts the sag. Through this alone, a person can't live the adam, meaning the level of ma vatzilus, but rather on something that transcends, something that transcends all of these levels. That's what a person, something, a level that transcends toyu and tikun, that's what a person can subsist on. And because it's this higher level, that's why it says your aves didn't know it, lo yadun avisecha, because avisecha is, of course, the level of chagas, but rather the idea of the man is going to be from a much higher level. Aval hatau uman shar mi meichas sima she'enim mislabish chulu. So we speak about chachma vatzilus, and we say that, you know, it's a level that's also a level that we can't understand, but yet we speak about the level of chachma vatzilus. But meichas sima is a level that has it's totally beyond. It's like, it's almost as if, from what I'm understanding here at least, that it's eris without kalim. So how can you have mayach without kalim? I have no idea. But anyway, this is the level. It's a very high level. And he says it can't come into kalim, the Alter Rebbe says. And it's from the level of atik, from the lowest level of the maitzel. All right. So basically, the aves are from a level of midas of atzilos, and the man is from the level, it's a sherish, is from chachma ilah. And the Alter Rebbe said actually earlier, it's actually coming from even higher than chachma ilah. And that's why it says that your fathers did not know it. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu was masakin the bracha of Hazan when the man descended, because the man descends from this level of moichas sima'a, which is really the makar of shema, even the level of ma that we have, which becomes manifest in a lower level, but it is sourced in this level of moichas sima'a, which is the level of Moshe. Moshe is nachnu ma. So Moshe is the level of ma, which is the inyan of bittul amiti, which is the level of yichuda ilah. Basically, right? Ein oid milvat. There's nothing except for the Eibishter. That's why Moshe was kvad peh. Peh is the inyan of moitze pi Hashem, the idea of something that becomes expressed in the lower levels of manifestations of Seder Ishtalshlus. That's why he was kvad peh. He couldn't speak because he wasn't of this world in that sense, of this level of revelation. He was from a higher level. Pez, the inyan of Gilui, and Amshacha. But Moshe Rabbeinu was this level of bittul that there's nothing except for the Eibishter. And this is the inyan of Yichuda Ilah. Now, in fact, we are mamshich this higher level, even though it's a level that's so far above. We're mamshich it, and that's why we have a bracha of Hazanas Hakol. We start off the bracha with bרכת Hashem, and the Alter Rebbe explains here a very beautiful, amazing idea. We see a difference between the first bracha and the second bracha. The first bracha of Hazanas Hakol is all in lashon nistar. What does nistar mean? It means third person. We're referring to the Eibishter, Hazan, that he sustains the world, kulai betuvai, in his kindness, his goodness. He, when we're saying he or his, him, that means he's not here. He's not in front of us. That's called nistar. He's concealed from the picture. He's not in the picture. We refer to him as he. Tuvai, right? His goodness. And this, Chassidus explains, is such a high level that you have a lower level. We're going to see soon. In the second bracha, we refer to the Eibishter as You gave us as an achala, right? We're referring to the Eibishter as you. That means you're in front of us, and we can address you. So that's already the lower level. Nistar is the higher level because it's a level that we can't even address because it's too beyond us. So we refer to it in the third person, Nistar. But it's a hamshacha b'bechina seviv kol almin. And that's the matbeya for the first bracha, which is all connected to the inyan of man. But like the Alter Rebbe is re-emphasizing here and is going to point out again, the whole inyan of the man was really something that gives us the power. It's a yehuda ilah, and it's a mindset that allows us to ultimately do yehuda tata, because yehuda tata is where the whole purpose is at. The Alter Rebbe is going to explain very soon. Yeshua Tiken laham berchas ha'aretz. Now we're in Ois Beis. Yehoshua established Berchas Haaretz, right? Al Haaretz ve'al Mazon, the second bracha of Berchas Hamazon, which is the level of Malchus, and this is in the language of Noichach, what we call second person, you, referring to the Eibishter as you. It's a lower level. And this is the idea of Eretz the Mafka Mazon. This is, we said above, we explained, well, how can we have Mazon again? Because no, it's really on the land that gives forth Mazon. But the Alter Rebbe explains that we're talking here really about the inyan. What is Eretz the Mafka Mazon? These are the birurim of Tehu, that Malchus has the capacity to be able to refine these levels of Sag and to bring them up to their source. And just like we eat bread and it becomes metabolized physically and gives us energy, etc., so too the Eretz, through the inyan of Eretz, we're talking about Eretz. This is all a symbolic of the concept of birur hanitzutzis. And Alter Rebbe brings here the inyan of Shema, that you just take a look at the word Shema. It's Shem Ayin. What is Shem? Shem, Shin Mem, it means a name. And it's a gematria 340. That's the gematria of Ban Rapach. The name of Ban Rapach. The Ban, one of the names of Hashem, has the ability to refine, to be mevarer the Rapach nitzutzis. And once it does that, it becomes Shem. And it's Shem Ayin. And it's Ayin Rabasi. It's a big Ayin, as explained elsewhere. And it has that's the idea of this is the whole idea of birur hanitzutzis. And Ayin Rabasi also is associated with the mazolis. You have the Ayin Sorim, mazolis, their sherish is from the Shmari Afanim. Okay. And this is the idea of Eretz, the Mafka Mazon, because this is the idea of Eretz, that now through this level, Eretz is, by the way, associated with Ban. This is the capacity that we have to be mevarer physicality. And that's why we're mentioning Mazon in the bracha of Eretz. Achilas Mazon Shatazon. The haynu hamshachas hakoyach ba'aretz. This is the power that has been given forth in Eretz, in the level of Malchus, to be mevar the birurim of the rapach nitzutzin, and to elevate them from the shviras hakelim and to bring them back up l'mayla. Okay, so this is the inyan of the second bracha, is birur nitzutzin. So the first bracha is the inyan of higher than birur. Second bracha is birur, but they're very much associated, as the Alter Rebbe is now going to continue explaining. And so we're going to see here that even to achieve Yehuda Tata, you need a hamshacha from Yehuda Ilah. You can't just do, even though Yehuda Tata is a lower level, we're going to say that it's Bittul Hayesh, it's the level of Haida'ah. What is Haida'ah? As explained elsewhere in Chassidus, the whole union of Haida'ah is that you're admitting. When you admit something, that means you're still maintaining your story a little bit, but you're just admitting that the truth has got to be that Einoid Milvade. But it's a hard story to buy. So I have to admit it, but I don't totally buy it. But that's the level of Haidah. That's Noida Lecha Hashem Elokeinu. That's the lower level. That's the Yehuda Tata. But the Alter Rebbe is going to say, right? We may say, well, it's just Yehuda Tata. No, that's the whole purpose. Our whole purpose for existence is this bittul hayesh. That's what the Eibishter wants, as the Rebbe is going to explain very soon. But nevertheless, how do we have the power to even do this bittul hayesh? We're really getting that power from a Yehuda Ilah, from from the bittul of the level of ma of Moshe Rabbeinu in the first bracha. So this is the second bracha starts with the inyan of hayda, and it concludes with a bracha that mברכים esach. Baruch is the level of hamshacha, from the level of chachma ilah, which is the true level of bittul, which is not the level of hayda. Hayda is again yichud tata, bittul hayesh. But in order for there to be a bittul hayesh, you also need the bracha v'hamshacha mibechinas yichud ilah. And so you need the birchas hazan. So the Alter Rebbe is explaining here, al pi Chassidus, that you have to have this higher level. You have to have this man level of hamshacha into our reality in order for us to be able to accomplish our bittul hayesh. And physically speaking, we have here a picture of a plant that's growing out from the Eretz. So the Eretz, it's all coming from below, right? But even the plant that's coming from below is receiving from the tal, which is associated with Shemayim, tal ha-Shemayim, and from the rain, the matar, and also from the sun, which is the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. So even when we're talking about a physical plant growing from the Aretz, from the koyach that's given into the Eretz to grow the plant, there's still a lot of Shemayim involved. In the same way, when we do our Aveda, and we're doing our Aveda, and again, the lower level, the Yichud Tata, and we're thinking, it's just the treasury of, okay, I got to do Bittul Hayesh again. Nevertheless, even for us, that which is going to be the whole purpose, this is what the Eibishter created the world for us to do the Bittul Hayesh Davka on this lowest level. But even our ability to do that is really coming from Milmaila. So the Alter Rebbe says, Afal Pisharis Mafka Mazon, even though it's giving out, the earth is giving out mazon from the keach hatzameach that's given into the land, nevertheless, it's receiving from the Shemayim, from the tal and the matar and the or hashemesh, and also the fact that you don't have an esav below that doesn't have a mazel that hits it and tells it to grow. So basically, even that, right? Even though everything, it looks like it's all happening down here, but everything that's happening down here is really coming from a koyach milmaila, from the inyan of the isarusa de le'ela that's higher than the isarusa de l'sata. So to above apel gav, even though the shem ban is the level of eretz, which is mevar the birurim of rapach, as we said above, that there should be a bittul hayesh, and that's the inyan of lechem min haaretz. Nevertheless, this all happens through a hamshacha from the level that the Zohar refers to as Yemei HaShemayim Denadin. You have this level of Yemei HaShemayim that illuminate upon it, which is a very high level of above that shines below, that gives us the ability to do our avodah. And Moshe is the level of Shemesh, shining from above, and he was masakin the first bracha, which is this again, this koyach milmaila. Now, the Iker Kavana, now going on to Yudalid, Amadalid. The Iker Kavana in Birchas Haaretz is for this whole union of the Birur, that we should have the Lechem min Haaretz. But this is not like our being Chaisim B'Shtayim. We said above, the Rabbi says you can't have two inyanim, two brachas concluding with the same theme. It's not Chaisim B'Shtayim. You're not concluding with the same theme. But it's really one thing. It's Eretz, the Mafka Mazon. The whole purpose of the Eretz is that there should be lechem, physical lechem, that we are mevarer. So it's all the inyan of birur of lechem that's coming from the Eretz. It's all one thing. And then the Alter Rebbe gives now a biur in the whole going on further in the bracha, and we say, Al shehinchalta lavisenu eretz chemda teva urchavet. Now in the bracha of Neidalcha, right? The bracha of Alaras Alabazin. So even though the inyan of Yichudei Law is much higher level than Yichudei Tata, but what's the purpose? What's the tachlis? Tachlis abriya sheyiya dira b'tachtainim daika. You probably heard that line before. Heard it before. That the whole purpose of existence is that there should be a dira b'tachtainim, which is associated with the inyan of Yesh and the Bittul Hayesh. The Eibishter never wanted the Bittul Hayesh. He wouldn't have created Yesh. The only reason why there's Yesh is because of the Eibishter desires is Bittul Hayesh. That's the inyan of Dira B'Tachtainim, Mitzad Tachtainim. And that's the whole inyan of Yisrael, because so Yisrael Elikim, which is again the inyan of the lower level, fighting with the lower level. And Schaikas Oli Elikim. Now, the power that we have to do this is coming from a much higher level. So we are empowered from above. So you don't think if you're in the so-called spiritual rat race and you're always thinking, I've got to overcome the Yitzhak again, I've got to do this bitla yeshi. Even your ability to do this is mamish coming from a much higher level. The fact that you're able to do it one time in your life, this is coming from the highest level. Alter is going to explain. The source of this hamshach, of this bittul, is coming from the level of Eretz, which is the level of Malchus Da'atzilus, because Zeh Hashar LaShem, the level of Malchus is the gateway. It's the gateway to, it's the portal to be able to enter into all of the higher levels, and it's mekabel from all of the levels. Why? Because Noitz Seifan Bitchilasan, because the very end, Malchus, is connected to the very highest, to Kesher. That's the whole purpose, and the whole idea becomes manifest specifically in the lowest level, right? The final thing that's done, that is exactly what the original purpose is. And that's why it's called Eretz Chemda, Eretz Chayfetz. Right, we continue with the bracha, Eretz Chemda. So what is the Eretz Chayfetz? Because this is the Chayfetz and Ratzon of the Eibishter, that there should be bittul yesh la'ayin. And this is all coming from the level of the Yid. Because why? Because Yisrael alu b'machshava. The Yidden first arose in the machshava of the Eibishter. So again, it's the inyan of Noit Seifan Bitchilasan. The very beginning was the machshava of the Yidden. So the Yidden end up down here in this battle. But we're only down here in this battle because we were the original reason, the original purpose. And we have the koyach to be mamshich, the gilui, also lamata. And so the first bracha is going to be the inyan of the lamaila, that we are in the makar, that we're, in a sense, alu b'machshava. That's all connected to the inyan of tala de bedulcha, the inyan of man, which is higher, eris, higher than any possible, containing in any possible vessel. But the ultimate is that becomes manifest below in our very real avodah that we do in this world, in our very real bittul hayesh. Therefore, first we say the bracha of zan, which is the inyan of the ki chafetz chesed hu. Like we say that the Eibishter created the world without our avodah because he's chafetz chesed. That's the inyan of, basically it's the isarusa de le'ela, which comes before any work that we do de l'sata. And afterwards we have the bracha of ha'aretz, which is the hamshacha through the ma'aseh hatachtenim. And rechav is the inyan of the bimamshich, the light of the orein soif. And therefore we say the bracha again. We say the bracha of ve'achalta ושבעת וברכת, and the bracha of ha'aretz. You might ask, you think in the first bracha, that's where you'd have, where's the mitzvah? The mitzvah we learn out from ve'achalta ושבעת וברכת. You should have that in the first bracha. No, because the purpose, the ultimate purpose is ultimately that the operation of Yehuda Ilah down here being empowered by the Yehuda Ilah above. And it's the whole inyan is the bittul hayesh. So now, the Alter Rebbe just so basically we've answered the question. Why do we need the original question was, so why do we need to bechlal if the whole inyan of the first bracha was because of the mon? Why are we saying it today? Because that inyan is still very much shaykh for us to do our aveda of the second bracha, which is the inyan of the birur of the lechem min haaretz. So you have to have the lechem min hashamayim, that whole inyan, in order for us to be able to be mevarer the lechem min haaretz. So that's even shaykh. That's shaykh very much today. And then the Alter Rebbe goes in and answers the question of the Rashba. The Rashba asks the question. So 1 second, aren't all of these brachas midaraisa? So how's Yeshua coming later on and being Masakin and David Melch and Shlomo? So Alter Rebbe explains, "Ve'hine gambi me'meisha keinim shenichnasu la'aretz hizkiru bracha aretz al bechinas bittul hayesh." Even in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, before they went into the land, they still had to have the inyan of bittul hayesh, which they mentioned. But then it was in a different nusach, and Alter Rebbe says it was nichlal inside of the first bracha. And as the Magen Avraham brings, that really all three brachas could be nichlal in the first bracha. You could just have one bracha to fulfill the doraisa, but that one bracha is going to include hazanas hakel, alos ve'alamazon, and the union of Bnei Yerushalayim in whatever way. So apparently all of these components were incorporated in the first bracha, even then. But then after the man concluded, and they came into Eretz Yisrael, so Yeshua was masakin a bracha for itself, and the answer of the Rashba, the Rashba's question is now answered. So basically, the point is that we have the whole Aveda over here. We have the Aveda of the man, which is really the Aveda of how we are in our source of Yisrael Olu b'machshava, that we are coming from the very highest level that cannot be contained. But ultimately, we are meant to come down here to take that power and get down into the nitty-gritty, into the work that we have to do with the guf and nefesh habahamis, and to be mevarer food, to be mevarer the lechem in haaretz, which is the avodah of being the tikkun, the whole world of tikkun that is being mevarer the world of sag. We're being mevarer ban, the sag that's fallen down into ban, and that's the avodah of mav, the adam, that we are being mevarer all of this physicality to bring it back up to its source. But it's not as if we're just down here. We are being empowered from the first brach of the man, from the highest of the high.